Premonitions. Another tremor rocked the Augeum chamber of the Palix Excelsium, causing a shower of marble and dust to rain from the ceiling. Grand Matriarch Yargasujan jumped backwards in time to avoid a fist-sized chunk which slammed into the tiles, missing her skull by the width of a Norfly's wing. "I thought I said I wanted those Gargant stone hurlers bombed into oblivion," she said. "Where are the Sky Battalions?" Wing Commodore Ragni Dreckerson removed his goggles, revealing twin circles of ruddy skin in a face otherwise stained entirely soot-black. "They've done as much as they can, Grand Matriarch. We must have set the whole field ablaze, but I've never seen so many greenskins in one place. They just keep coming." Yargasujan cursed under her breath. Her fingers closed around the jewelled pommel of Warspite. She had not unsheathed the song in far too long, and her warrior's heart yearned to join her city folk atop the great curtain wall of Excelsis to repel the cursed Auric invaders with blade and gunshot. But that was not her place. Not anymore. "Get whatever we have refueled, rearmed, and back into the air," she snapped. "Tell the Scarlet Scourge to ram their contraptions down the Gargants' throats if need be. The walls cannot withstand this barrage." Dreckerson's eyes were bleary with fatigue after a day and night of constant sorties, but he did not object. He knew the omens as well as she. It was fight or die now. The Dwarden made the sign of the comet, snapped its heels together, and departed. Yargasujan doubted she would ever see him again, but put the thought far from her mind. In war there was no place for sentimentality. The Grand Matriarch stared at the shimmering floor of the Augurium, hoping that something within the dizzying collage of half-formed images would stand out to her. The entirety of the chamber floor was carved from prophecy-infused crystal mined from the Spear of Malice, forming a stratified map of the City of Secrets and the surrounding coastline. Emanating from the smooth obsidian were minute fragments of augury, projected in visual form. A stretch of wall overwhelmed and stormed by hulking auric brutes. A gyrocopter squadron spiralling down in flames to smash into the veins, toppling ramshackle buildings like playing cards. These were disasters yet to come, some of which may be circumvented by bold action. The Augurium offered the city's military commanders a glimpse of forthcoming events, a premonition of the anarchic ebb and flow of combat. Though the hardliner, anti-magic thugs of the Nullstone Brotherhood would spit blood if they knew of its presence, and indeed its importance to the city's defences, the ingenious sorcery of this chamber had been instrumental in keeping the enormous Greenskin Horde at bay. Still, it was not foolproof. It took the combined arcane communion of dozens of the collegiate seers to siphon and interpret such an endless torrent of visions and gleanings, and the work took a grievous toll. Even then, it was not always reliable. If it had been, maybe they would have seen this disaster coming long ago. One of the clearest images depicted the eastern gate towers assailed by a churning throng of greenskins, hooded gargants reaching up to pluck hurricanum emplacements and cannon batteries as if they were ripe fruit. This image lasted only a few moments before evaporating into motes of dancing light. "Hi, Ordnancer," Yargasujan said, turning to the diminutive Daland Cross, who snapped to attention. "Turn half a dozen Hellstorm batteries to the eastern gate and get them sighted in. I want a storm of death to rain down on anything that dares approach our walls." Cross nodded and began bellowing a stream of orders to his adjutants. It was not truly the purview of the Grand Matriarch to be reorganizing artillery batteries, but needs must. Prime Commander Fettelin was dead, crushed to paste by a falling cannon, and there was an unspoken agreement that Yargasujan, a former general of the Free Guilds herself and a veteran of a dozen campaigns, was the best place to take over his duties. "By the God King, no!" moaned Granseer Trasmus, who knelt at the centre. He was surrounded by a dozen acolytes, all trembling under the strain of deciphering the fragmented readings of the Spear of Malice into something semi-decipherable. As the Grand Matriarch turned to speak with her foremost interpreter of prophecies, another of the wizards collapsed, drooling blood and twitching spasmodically. "Speak up, Grandseer," growled Flavius Murgat, the city's orator Magnus. His voice seemed to shake the chamber as much as the distant thunder of Gargant-hurled boulders raining down from beyond the walls. "Vague exclamations are of little help to us." Trasmus waved his iron oak staff, and a sphere of glittering light coalesced in the air before him. Within the orb of light, the Grand Matriarch could glimpse a grim canvas, the cavorting host of painted men and women spilling through the west gate, eyes rolling over white as they fell upon the few beleaguered freeguilders that still held the passage behind a barricade of auric corpses. Sauntering through the carnage came two strange figures. The first, a gilded statue of a being, a flaxen-haired prince with curving horns and joyous evil eyes. The second, a corpulent mass of flesh atop a lurching palanquin, borne aloft by pale-fleshed brutes, blood seeping down his many jowls. Yargasujan's revulsion rose as bile in her throat, and she spat upon the floor as the image petered into nothing. "Yet another host descends upon us," says Trasmus, his voice little more than a whisper. "Skin revellers and decadent reavers, many thousands at least." A bitter growl of frustration escaped the Grand Matriarch. "Sigmar's blood! Is there no end to our misfortune? Filthy rat-men crawling beneath our streets, a continent's worth of greenskins hammering at our gates, and now a damned heathen cavalcade. How long do we have?" "I do not know for certain. The premonition is unclear. Perhaps several days, perhaps no more than a matter of hours." "We cannot hold against another army," said High Despot Legaman, his measured, almost bored voice belaying the severity of his words. He stared at her through heavy-lidded eyes, apparently ambivalent to the disaster unfolding around them. Yargasujan had always found the man's unflappable nature strangely infuriating. "Grand Matriarch, it may be time to consider our options. Neither the Oryx nor this heathen army can be allowed to lay their hands upon the Spear of Malice in the White Reaper's absence. The decision to enact the deathless decree is yours alone." "No!" snapped Yargasujan. "Not while my soldiers have bullets left to fire and strength enough to lift a sword. I will not turn our guns upon this city until all hope is lost." "What I showed you was but a fraction of the evils I have foreseen," said Trasmus. "You cannot imagine what horrors these fiends will unleash upon Excelsis. My sacred duty is to safeguard the Spear of Malice and to prevent its secrets from falling into the hands of the unworthy. What dreadful things might the worshippers of ruin accomplish were they to seize it?" "They will not," came a strange chirping voice. The Grand Matriarch and her advisers turned to see a diminutive creature standing amidst the swirling lights of the inaugurium, leaning upon a staff of gold. It was a bipedal reptile, less than half the size of Yargasujan herself, with a crown of iridescent feathers atop its crest. It stared at her through unblinking yellow eyes. "How did this creature enter the Palace Excelsium?" roared Flavius Mugat. "Star scales have no place in the conclave. Get it out of here. We have a war to fight." Yargasujan held up a hand to silence the blustering oaf. She was one of the very few beings in the city who had seen the strange lizard shamans of the Seraphon in battle first-hand, and knew that despite its frail appearance, this creature could immolate the orator Magnus with a flick of its claws. "Your counsel is welcome," she said, meeting the skink's gaze. "You believe this heathen host will not reach the city? But my augurs say otherwise. I have glimpsed their visions myself." The skink priest cocked its head again. Its reptilian features were hard to read, but the Grand Matriarch thought she caught a hint of amusement as the creature bared its needle-like teeth. "Visions only," it said, its voice strangely distant and muffled. Yargasujan was not sure if the creature was speaking naturally, or if she alone could hear its thoughts echoing in her mind. "Ripples cast across ocean of stars, but only reflections of true pattern, not to be trusted." The shaman's eyes glowed like blue fire. It began to walk amongst the sculpted map of the coast of Tusks, reaching out to pluck strands of magic, weaving them together into a sphere of blinding white light. "See," the lizard shaman said, and hurled the orb at Yargasujan. Its radiance engulfed her, There was a flash of intense pain, and a raft of images came flooding into her mind. Again she saw the great host of heathen revellers, but this time they were not forcing their way through the gates of her city. Instead, they were encamped in a thick and gloomy jungle, surrounded by the slain and mutilated corpses of scaled creatures, a breed of seraphon, but far larger and more fearsome than the little shaman. Judging by the scores of slain chaos worshippers strewn about, they had accounted for many of their foes before succumbing to death. The aftermath of some bloody battle. Again, she glimpsed the gilded giant and the bloated glutton staring at one another with looks of utmost hatred from across the corpse-strewn clearing. The followers of each heathen lord gathered about their respective master. The sense of tension was palpable. "What is this?" Yargasujan said.
"The pattern will start,"
came the lizard shaman's voice.
"Events ordered to fit the great plan at the cost of many earth spawns. A necessary sacrifice."
How or why the killing started, the Grand Matriarch could not say. There were raised voices, shouts and insults, boasts and accusations. A blade was drawn and thrust into an eye socket. The heathens fell upon each other in a frenzy of violence, stabbing, gouging, and tearing. Swaggering, masked warriors danced and swayed through a mass of pale, writhing bodies, opening bellies and throats with graceful swipes of their swords. Crested knights atop strange, lizard-like mounts fought hideous claw-limbed fiends, while rippling volleys of arrows punched deep into tattooed flesh. Yargasujan, no stranger to violence, found her gorge rising at the sheer sadism of it all. The two rival warlords hacked and shoved their way through the melee, desperate to murder one another. Before they met in battle, the visions ceased.
"Grand Matriarch!"
Ugat was shouting, directly into her ear at hurricane force. She shoved him away. Her conclave members were staring at her with looks of concern and confusion. "I am fine," Yargasujan snapped, before turning back to the lizard shaman. "The heathens have turned upon one another, then. They will not come to my city?"
"In time, but too late to prevent what is to come."
Relief flooded through Yargasujan, but was quickly extinguished when she recalled the forces already arrayed against her people. One disaster at a time, then. That was the key to military command, in the Grand Matriarch's opinion. "So we are to be spared the lash of the Dark Prince after all," she said. "Just the small matter of 1,000,000 greenskins to deal with, and a bunch of deranged cultists running amok in the Crystalfall district. And doubtless other disasters as yet to reveal themselves. What has your master seen of my city's fate, Starscale? Can we survive the night?"
"This I cannot know. There is a void in the cosmic pattern all around this place. Even the mightiest relic priest cannot penetrate its blackness. We see only blood and fire, and the earth split asunder. Much death to come, warm blood, much suffering."
"You will stand with us regardless?" Yargasujan asked. It cocked its head and studied her for a moment, then bobbed its head. "Good," the Grand Matriarch said, feeling a surge of energy for the first time in what felt like days. "Summon the entire conclave, and send word to the White Reaper. If Excelsis is to fall, we shall make its end a legend they will sing about in Azarheim until the stars themselves burn out."